Oh, hi VC. Greetings, vinyl community. It's time to show off my vinyl finds for the past month and a half or so. And earlier today I was watching Shannon Dee's very excellent channel, and she was doing a ranking of the Genesis albums from the 1970s. And I'd mentioned in the comments that I was awaiting a copy of Genesis Live. I've been looking for just the right copy. I'm being fussy. I want a really minty one. Well, lo and behold, it arrived today, and maybe it's not really quite the minty one I was hoping for, but what a great album it is. I was a little bit late getting into Genesis, insofar as I was already into the likes of Yes and Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Jethro Tull, Gentle Giant, King Crimson, all those bands before really discovering Genesis, or not discovering them because I was aware of them, but really hearing their music properly, or at all, and was introduced to them in 1974. Towards the end of the year, when I heard a radio station out of Los Angeles, KMET or KLOS, premiering The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, which wasn't out in the stores yet. I went out and bought, not that one, but Selling England by the Pound. That was right around Christmas time in 1974. So that was my first Genesis album. This was my second. Great album, all classic tracks. Watcher of the Skies is the intro. Get 'Em Out by Friday. The Return of the Giant Hogweed. Interesting thing about that song, or many interesting things about the song, but in particular, all the botanical facts about the hogweed in the song are actually true. The stuff about the sunlight interacting with the poison and so on, that's all real. It's not just wacky stuff that Peter Gabriel made up. The musical box is on here, so you've got two cuts from Foxtrot, two cuts from Nursery Crime, and an oldie, The Knife, to finish things off. So a nice little representation of the earlier phase of Genesis to serve as my fill-in for the background of the band. Also, shortly after my last Vinyl Finds video, I went back to Vinyl Solution, the only record store in the area, only one certainly within walking distance. And they're usually not a good shop for jazz. But I really hit pay dirt this time because this was definitely on my want list. McCoy Tyner, Enlightenment, double live from Montreux Festival, 1976. Or no, 1973. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. You'll see. Quartet lineup with Azar Lawrence on saxophone, Junie Booth on bass, and Alphonse Mouzon on drums. And McCoy is just on fire. Sometimes one gets the feeling, certainly from listening to his solo records on Impulse, that maybe he wasn't quite into the free bag as much as John Coltrane was when he was playing with John Coltrane. And perhaps that's why he ended up being replaced by Alice when John just took the free bag to its extreme, or to the limit of where he was going with it. And I think he was catching up with it on this, because he really is just putting on a tumultuous and tempestuous performance that has so much energy. Great album and really nice condition, and it was cheap. But not as cheap as a couple of classical items from the 49-cent bin, including Leonard Bernstein and the New York Philharmonic Symphony No. 4 Gustav Mahler. This is a early 60s, it says commemorating the 100th anniversary of Mahler's birth, which would be 1960. I think this may have been recorded a little bit before that. Love the artwork. I think they had a cycle with this kind of artwork because I have a similar packaging for Bernstein's recording of Des Knaben Wunderhorn. And at 49 cents, can't go wrong. Also from the 49-cent bin, Walter Carlos, Switched on Bach 2, the sequel. And of course this was before she came out as Wendy. This is a British pressing. And the showpiece on this is a recording of the 5th Brandenburg Concerto, which takes up all of side 5. And a particular star of the 5th Concerto is the harpsichord, which has a very tickly part and works really nicely applied to the Moog synthesizer. So, that's that. Not from Vinyl Solution, but this was from eBay. Anton Bruckner, Symphony No. 8. And Bruckner falls into the same general category of Mahler, both sort of disciples in a way of Wagner. Bruckner was an interesting cat because he wrote huge symphonies. They're lengthy, they are heavily orchestrated, they're just big in nature. Bruckner himself was a very humble man and very insecure. He was very sensitive to criticism. He continued to, he studied orchestration and composition well into his adulthood. He didn't write his serious symphonies until he was about 40, or in his 40s. The first symphony he wrote was one that he dismissed. It was just considered a student exercise, and we know that today as the Symphony No. 00. And there's a second symphony that he wrote after his official first symphony that he withdrew from performance. And so that one's been nicknamed the Symphony No. 0. So his other symphonies that did survive, the official 9, he tended to revise, so they exist in different published versions with different orchestration because he was sensitive to the criticism he received. He was a weird guy. He was very religious, a devout Catholic. He never married, not because he didn't want to, but because he only ever proposed to teenage girls. And it's not because he was a perv, but it was because he was terrified of marrying a woman who wasn't a virgin, because he felt that would be sinful. So he figured that teenage girls would be a better bet for being a virgin and better marriage material. Now, I don't know if teenage girls in 19th century Austria were really different from teenage girls in 20th century California, but I think I could tell old Anton a thing or two. Morton Feldman, Rothko Chapel and For Frank O'Hara on the Odyssey label. This is one of a group of records that I had ordered back before the shutdown. And they were delivered to my office after the shutdown. I had half a dozen records that I couldn't get at, and they've been sitting there for months. I finally got a kind person who accessed the building who agreed to hand deliver them to me, so that was great. This was one of them. Feldman's music is notable for its low dynamic range, very quiet, very still, very much simpatico with the artwork of Mark Rothko, which is celebrated in the side one piece, which is meant to be heard in the Rothko Chapel, the art space that Rothko designed to showcase these works. The scoring on that piece is Karen Phillips, the regular performer of Feldman's work, on viola, James Holland on percussion, and Greg Smith singers. The side two piece for Frank O'Hara is scored for flute, clarinet, violin, two percussionists, piano, and cello. And you have to admire his presenting a full sidelong piece of music that is so still, so quiet, but just builds up to one big whap in the middle that never recurs. Now, when I misspoke about what year McCoy Tyner played that recording at the Mantra Festival, this is what I was thinking of. Anthony Braxton, the Mantra Berlin concerts. And as the title implies, this is actually drawn from two different performances, the first being Mantra in 1975, and this was with the quartet that he was leading around the time he really broke into public consciousness after signing to Arista. And he had the band with himself on woodwinds, Kenny Wheeler on trumpet, Barry Altschul on drums, and Dave Holland on bass. And this was essentially a spin-off of the earlier band Circle with Chick Corea, which was Braxton, Corea, Holland, and Altschul. The other half of this is from the Berlin Jazz Days, 1976, including music by a quartet with the same rhythm section of Dave Holland and Barry Altschul, but the second horn is now George Lewis on trombone. And the lower horn, of course, accompanying Braxton, who play everything from the tiny, squeaky little sopranino saxophone to the monster contrabass clarinet that's, the voice of grumblings from the depths of the ocean. Still, having the second voice in counterpoint with him or paired off with him being that lower horn gives a very different feel to the quartet. And side four of the album is an orchestral piece, chamber orchestra with Braxton on, guess what, the sopranino sax and the contrabass clarinet, and George Lewis on the trombone, also from the Berlin Jazz Days. Great, great album. This is one of my favorites of Braxton. Double LP on the Arista label. And another album from the stash that's been sitting on my office desk for months. Shirley Scott plays Horace Silver from 1961 on Prestige. This is an organ trio recording with Henry Grimes on bass and Otis Finch on drums, an original Prestige with a $1.98 stamp on the back. This isn't, incredible, but I just love some funky organ. I love Shirley Scott. There she is, as usual, with a cigarette in her hand. And a particular notable feature of the album is the liner note that describes Shirley Scott as a nimble-fingered lass. And again, from those old records that have been sitting around, East Broadway Rundown, Solly Runnins, Sonny Rollins, Toy Boat, from 1966. This was his last album of the 60s. He took a break from recording for 6 years. This was not the break when he went and practiced on the bridge. That was prior to his run on the Impulse label. This was a second sabbatical that started off with just, he stopped making records, then he stopped recording and went and studied meditation and yoga for a while before coming back in the 70s. This is with Elvin Jones and Jimmy Garrison, so you've got the bass and drums team from the classic Coltrane Quartet, and Freddie Hubbard as the second horn, Freddie Hubbard on trumpet. Great album. Title track, East Broadway Rundown, is a full side-long piece, a bit more experimental than usual from Sonny Rollins. Another original, Blessing in Disguise, a 12.5-minute piece, and finally a show tune, We Kiss in the Shadows, Rodgers and Hammerstein. Yet another item retrieved from the office. Peter Hamill of Vandergraaf Generator, Fool's Mate, his first solo album, recorded in 1971, released in 1972. This is a US copy. Nice gatefold. Seldom seen in the US release. Certainly didn't sell a lot and wasn't seen very often. This is on the famous Charisma label as distributed by Buddha, so you get the Buddha inner sleeve. And although he has all of the Vandergraaf Generator members playing on this, along with Robert Fripp, this is not a really proggy type album. It's not one that emphasizes instrumental prowess at all. It's very much a singer-songwriter oriented album. Poetic lyrics in a rather naive style. It's definitely the work of a younger Peter Hamill. I think that many of the songs were already old by the time this was recorded, but it's still a very fine album, really enjoyable. Debut album of Matching Mole, the very progressive band led by Robert Wyatt, formerly of Soft Machine. So the band's name is a bilingual pun on the French words for Soft Machine. He is accompanied here by David Sinclair, also known from Caravan, Bill McCormick, known from Phil Manzanera's 801, which came a bit later, and Phil Miller, known from Hatfield in the North, National Health. Superb album of classic prog rock from the Canterbury genre or Canterbury division. ArtZoid from France, Symphonie pour le jour où brûleront les cités, Symphony for the Day When Cities Will Burn. This was originally their debut album. This is a 1980 re-recording. The original was from 1977, I believe. I don't think it says here. This is chamber rock with very little rock to it. It's pretty much a chamber group. The instrumentation is Frank Cardon on violin, Gérard Dubet on violin and viola, Patricia Dalio on piano, Alain Eckert on guitar, Jean-Pierre Suarez on trumpet, Gilles Renard on saxophone, and Terry Zabwatsev on bass and vocals. The vocals are basically just the occasional grunt and growl. This is very dark, very classical, but not without a sense of humor. And this was released in 1981 on the Atom label. First solo album by Edgar Frey of Tangerine Dream, Aqua. This is a British pressing with a nice laminated cover and a more vivid blue than the US release. Very much in the style of Tangerine Dream of that day. This is one of the earlier Virgin releases. The number is 2016, so I suppose this may be around the 16th release on the Virgin label. It's maybe a little bit more sparse than the full band's work. A little bit less dramatic, but definitely shares the classic Tangerine Dream DNA. John Hassell from 1977, Vernal Equinox. Amazing album of John Hassell's electronically treated trumpet. He's accompanied on various tracks by Nana Vasconcelos on congas and percussion, David Rosenboom on mbira, Tropical Birds, just the drone of a Serge synthesizer, assorted animal sounds. Wonderful ambient album, a classic of ambient music. This is a new reissue on the Naeda label, and it comes with liner notes on the inner sleeve, including an essay by Brian Eno, who went on to collaborate with John Hassell on a couple of albums. Finally, Grateful Dead, Anthem of the Sun. This is the new picture disc release. New or new-ish. And that was another item from the stash back at the office. There were 6 LPs altogether, plus this very cool Grateful Dead CD box set, concerts from 1976. Wonderful packaging as always. This one had a real journey because it was originally delivered to the office by UPS, or not delivered to the office. It was returned to sender, and I didn't know. I thought it had been waiting on my desk for months. So when I found out that it wasn't, I contacted the Grateful Dead's merchandising arm and said, hey, this was returned to you. Can you resend it to my home? Well, they resent it all right, but they sent it back to the office. This time it got delivered, so it was brought to me along with those other LPs. That's it. That's quite enough. Thank you very much for watching. Be well. Talk with you again soon. Bye-bye for now.